Hello, and welcome back to Cassie's series on competition with China. In this video, we will introduce the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, abbreviated the PLA-RF and referred to as the PLARF. The goal of this video is to provide a comprehensive introduction to the PLARF. We'll cover the PLARF's missions, major operational thought, organization, training, equipment, personnel issues, and facilities. The PLA Rocket Force is responsible for the PLA's land-based nuclear and conventional missiles. In China's 2019 Defense White Paper, the most recent white paper outlining China's national defense strategy, it describes the role and near-term development goals of the PLARF as follows. Quote, the PLARF plays a critical role in maintaining China's national sovereignty and security. It comprises nuclear missile, conventional missile, and support units, along with their subordinate missile bases, with strategic requirements for both nuclear and conventional missiles, and capable of deterring wars in all battle spaces. The PLARF will enhance its credible and reliable nuclear deterrence and counterattack capabilities, strengthen its intermediate and long-range precision strike forces, and enhance its strategic counterbalance capability, so as to build a strong and modernized rocket force, unquote. The PLARF thus maintains the dual mission set of both nuclear deterrence and counterattack, as well as conventional missile strike in support of PLA military operations. It would no doubt play a critical role in any potential conflict between China and its neighbors, with capabilities aimed at Taiwan, the South China Sea, the Korean Peninsula, Japan, India, and the Pacific forces of the United States. The PLARF, formerly known as the 2nd Artillery Force until 2016, was formed in 1966 and given command of China's humble inventory of land-based regional nuclear missiles. These first-generation missiles were largely categorized as unsophisticated and of limited range and capability. The story of the PLARF, however, has been one of steady and progressive growth in both size and capability, beginning with the development of the increasingly longer-range systems through the 1960s and 70s, and with the introduction of the DF-5 in the early 1980s, the first intercontinental ballistic missile capable of striking the United States. The 1980s were a seminal decade for the 2nd Artillery Force in two other ways. First, through its development of the DF-21, the PLA's first road-mobile ballistic missile system, and second, through its decision to field conventional as well as nuclear missiles, leading to the introduction of the DF-11 and DF-15 short-range ballistic missiles in the early 1990s. The steady diversification of platforms and improvement in capabilities assigned to the 2nd Artillery was matched by its equally steady growth in size. 4 new brigades were stood up between 1980 and 2000, 3 of which were equipped with the latest weapon systems. The expansion accelerated in the 2000s, and between 2000 and 2010, the 2nd Artillery stood up as many as 11 new brigades, equipped with its growing array of weapons, including its first ground-launched cruise missile, the CJ-10, and its first road-mobile ICBM, the DF-31. The pace of growth continued to intensify between 2010 and 2020, as the 2nd Artillery, and following the name change in 2016, the PLA Rocket Force, added 13 new brigades, as well as more important weapon systems such as the DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missile, the longer-range and more capable DF-41 road-mobile ICBM, the dual-capable nuclear and conventional DF-26 IRBM, and the DF-17 hypersonic glide vehicle. Incredibly, between 2017 and late 2019, the PLARF added at least 10 new missile brigades. This unprecedented expansion from 29 to 39 brigades represented more than 1/3 increase in size in only 3 years. The PLARF has also emerged as a major winner in the PLA's 2015 reforms, being upgraded to a full service at the time that other services were either being reduced in size or were losing direct control of their forces to the new Joint Theater Commands. Thus, the PLARF has evolved from a small, unsophisticated force of short-range and vulnerable ballistic missiles to an increasingly large, modern, and formidable force with a wide array of both nuclear and conventional weapons platforms. Now let's examine how the PLARF organizes itself to fulfill its missions. The PLARF is directly subordinate to the Chinese Communist Party's Central Military Commission, which is the PRC's supreme national defense authority. Like all other PLA services, the PLARF headquarters consists of 4 major departments. These are the Staff Department, Political Work Department, Logistics Department, and Equipment Department. There is also a party oversight entity in the form of the Discipline and Inspection Committee. The PLARF commander and political commissar who are both four-star equivalents, are co-equals in leading PLARF headquarters. However, formal decision-making authority regarding force-wide manpower, training, and equipment issues resides with the PLARF's Standing Party Committee. This party committee typically consists of the PLARF political commissar as the secretary, the PLARF commander as the deputy secretary, along with their deputies, the heads of the four major departments, and the secretary of the PLARF Discipline and Inspection Committee. Collectively, these individuals must reach a consensus for all major decisions related to the PLARF. The PLARF oversees 9 bases. And a quick note, the PLA uses the term base with a capital B, which refers to a permanent standing organization. This is the same as a regiment, brigade, or division. A base is usually equivalent to a corps or corps deputy grade unit, which is one level above a division. Each base, in turn, may oversee one or more small B bases, that is, a physical location housing military forces. So these big B operation bases, and we're talking the big B organizational structures, 6 of these bases, numbered sequentially from 61 to 66, are responsible for missile operations, while the other 3, bases 67 to 69, conduct support missions. Each of the 6 operation bases covers discrete geographic areas. The missile brigades of Base 61 cover eastern and some of southeastern China, and would be the primary forces tasked with operations against Taiwan. Base 62 covers the rest of southeastern China. Base 63 covers inland southern China, and 64 covers northwest and north central China, while Base 65 covers eastern and northeastern China, and finally Base 66 covers central China. Each big base oversees both nuclear and conventional forces, and features a unique makeup of nuclear and conventional capabilities depending on the individual mission and strategic needs. Base 61, for instance, is made up of mostly short-range conventional missile brigades for its Taiwan mission, while the more inland bases, such as Bases 64 and 66, are made up primarily of long-range nuclear forces. Unlike the PLA Army, Navy, and Air Force counterparts, the PLARF does not have theater rocket force commands within each theater command. The 6 operations bases serve a similar role to the theater rocket force, but given their smaller size, are at a lower tier than the other services. Further, the bases don't map perfectly on each of the theater commands. For one, there are 6 bases and only 5 theater commands, and some bases cover multiple theater commands. Now, the exact relationship between the bases and the joint theater commands remains somewhat unclear, but there is ample evidence to suggest that the PLARF bases increasingly cooperate with and are being integrated into the joint theater command system. And they are incorporated in the training to enable joint operations between the PLARF and its land, air, and sea counterparts. Command authority of the base's nuclear and conventional missile forces can be somewhat difficult to grasp. In peacetime, nuclear forces are administratively subordinate to their individual bases, but in wartime are operationally placed under the direct control of the CMC. As stated above, initial evidence suggests that conventional missile forces are being integrated into the Joint Theater Command, but it's unclear whether the operational control in wartime will lie with the PLARF base or the theater commander. Moving down one level, each base controls 6 to 7 missile brigades, along with several support regiments who are responsible for training, communications, operations support, maintenance and logistics, and nuclear warhead management. Each missile brigade typically oversees 6 launch battalions, as well as 4 to 5 support battalions, and each launch battalion in turn oversees 2 launch companies. Battalions can be widely dispersed and appear to be capable of independent launch. Official and comprehensive estimates of missile and launchers per brigade are lacking, but knowledgeable observers have given estimates ranging from 6 to 12 launchers per brigade for certain ICBMs, 12 to 24 for medium-range ballistic missiles, 18 to 36 for intermediate-range ballistic missiles, and up to 36 or 48 launchers per brigade for the short-range ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. Along with the 6 operations bases, there are 3 support bases, which are worth briefly discussing. Base 67 is responsible for oversight of the PRC's nuclear warhead storage depot at Taipei in central China. It ensures safe and secure storage, maintenance, and transport via specialized road, air, and rail assets of the nuclear warheads. It also oversees assets dedicated to ECM, air defense, and nuclear disaster response. Base 68 is the PLARF's engineering support base, responsible for construction of the physical infrastructure. It likely consists of 6 engineering brigades, at least 2 of which specialize in installation of key infrastructure, such as electricity, ventilation, and blast and radiation shielding. A communications engineering regiment is responsible for constructing the PLARF's communications infrastructure, and a communications repair and maintenance regiment, and at least 4 other support regiments. Finally, Base 69 acts as a testing and training facility for the Rocket Force. This base provides high-end testing facilities for the research and development of new systems and training facilities for the operational forces. Although much remains unknown about this base, it comprises 4 test and training districts created from 3 former PLARF training bases, as well as several regiments supporting testing and training missions. In addition to these 9 bases, the PLARF also oversees 2 independent commands. The first is the PLARF's Research Academy, and like all other PLA service research academies, this organization is responsible for conducting and integrating early-stage applied research on both technically useful to the PLARF as well as operational concepts. The second independent command is poorly understood but may be related to the PRC's foreign ballistic missile sales. The PLARF, unlike the United States military, lacks a centralized institution for training enlisted personnel, such as Lackland Air Force Base or Parris Island. Rather, new enlisted personnel are typically assigned to one of the 9 PLARF bases, and then trained by that base's training regiment for 3 months before being assigned to an operational unit under that same base, where they will receive further on-site training in their specialty. The PLARF, as with the rest of the PLA, has in recent years placed a greater emphasis on more realistic training scenarios, including frequent use of confrontation, aka red versus blue OPFOR exercises. And a brief side note, the Chinese use the same red-blue terms, and they mean the same things. Red is China, and blue is the United States. We just differ on who the opposing force is. Traditionally, PLA confrontation exercises have suffered from being highly formulaic and always ensuring a red team victory. But the PLA has worked in recent years to remedy this situation and to make these exercises far more realistic and difficult. The PLARF has at least 1 dedicated OPFOR regiment, which was at least partially modeled after the equivalent American unit at Fort Irwin. It also maintains 4 test and training districts through which launch units regularly rotate for realistic training. These districts allow for training in a range of difficult weather and terrain conditions, including cold weather and desert conditions. PLARF bases also seem to have their own indigenous OPFOR units of perhaps a company or battalion strength, to allow for adding additional confrontation training. The PLARF also has increased training in joint operations and in other services. Beginning in 2016, the PLARF began holding the annual Tianjin, or Sky Sword exercise, which features joint cooperation with other services, as well as extensive use of OPFOR. In recent years, the Rocket Force Command College has also held a new annual training exercise called Jianfeng, or Sword Edge. Brigade commanders are tested on problem solving, strategic thinking capabilities, and deepening operational designs and tactical innovations. Emphasis is placed on real-world combat scenarios. A close reading of PLA and PLARF media suggests that the PLARF has singled out several training areas for particular emphasis, and these include nighttime training, as well as defense against enemy satellite surveillance, electronic warfare, nuclear, biological, and chemical attacks, and special operations raids, as well as the ability to maintain highly mobile through rapid shoot-and-scoot tactics to avoid being targeted by an enemy. Units assigned to silo-based missiles frequently conduct sealed-off underground silo training, which can last up to 30 days. In the event a launch unit takes casualties, PLARF soldiers train to take on multiple roles. Reports indicate that a battalion can lose upwards of 40% of its personnel and still be able to maintain a minimal launch capability. Most of the PLARF's officers graduate from one of the PLARF's 2 military academies. These are the Rocket Force Command College in Wuhan and the Rocket Force Engineering University in Xi'an. Both institutions offer graduate degrees for continuing study. As part of its drive toward a more educated force, the PLARF has also begun recruiting officers from civilian academic institutions. The year before an officer cadet graduates, or immediately upon graduation, at least some officers spend several months at an operational unit in a student capacity. This is most likely to provide that individual with some operational familiarization. They will then officially commission as an officer and serve for 4 years at the company level, first as a company deputy commander and then as a company commander. In this capacity, they will oversee a team of enlisted personnel who operate anywhere between 1 to 4 launcher units. The number of launchers per company is dependent on the type of weapon system. In addition to ensuring that the launch systems for which they are responsible execute orders as required, PLARF company commanders regularly train to take on battalion command responsibilities. This is almost certainly due to the PLARF's desire to cross-train personnel to fulfill multiple functions such that a launch unit can maintain minimal operational capability despite heavy personnel losses. It is at the battalion level that the PLARF launch officers begin to gain a degree of authority and independence. Unlike launch companies that will typically be deployed alongside a battalion headquarters, PLARF launch battalions will often operate far from the brigade headquarters. In essence, the PLARF launch battalion is typically the lowest level maneuver and fire unit for the PLARF. After serving as a company commander, PLARF officers will frequently spend a year or two in a brigade or higher level staff assignment before landing in a battalion deputy commander position. They will then spend roughly 4 years as a deputy battalion commander and then a battalion commander. In this capacity, a PLARF launch officer is expected to interpret brigade commands and execute them in the field. This frequently involves having to take initiative and making decisions without verification from up echelon command elements. This authority and independence is likely tied once again to the PLARF's expectation that its launch battalions will be under constant threat from adversary fires, and thus may need to be able to act without having communications with the brigade headquarters. PLARF officers will sometimes spend a second tour after the battalion level, serving in a staff assignment. Typically, this assignment will be at a level higher than the brigade, usually at the base or service headquarters level. At the brigade level, PLARF officers will finally exercise leadership over both launch and support units. Launch officers will first serve in a deputy commander or brigade chief of staff position for roughly 3 years prior to becoming a full brigade commander. In this capacity, they will become familiar with the wide range of responsibilities that are associated with brigade command. Once an officer becomes a full brigade commander, they will be responsible for the overall unit management and operations, and they also act as an interface for higher echelon commands, typically at the joint level. In a wartime environment, this translates to the brigade commander ensuring that his unit's standing plans and procedures remain valid and that his unit's subordinate battalions are prepared to support a larger firepower strike. The PLARF, as well as the rest of the PLA, has traditionally suffered from a relative dearth of quality, well-educated personnel. This is especially true of the enlisted force. While this situation was acceptable when the PLA relied primarily on overwhelming manpower, it has become increasingly untenable as the PLA attempts to transform itself into a force relying on cutting-edge technologies and complex joint operations. Despite oftentimes being placed into technically demanding roles, including roles which involve handling delicate explosive or nuclear materials, a significant proportion of the PLARF's enlisted and NCO force have only a middle school education and oftentimes struggle to meet the technical requirements of these roles. The PLARF and the PLA as a whole are well aware of this issue and have taken steps to improve the recruitment of personnel with high school and even college education into its enlisted and NCO ranks, with some apparent success. However, while the trend in recent years has been toward a more educated force, a significant proportion of the PLARF's enlisted and NCO force still only have rudimentary education, and this will continue to be true for the foreseeable future. In addition to slowly improving the quality of its recruitment, the PLARF has also begun a variety of pilot programs to improve the education and technical skills of its existing personnel at all levels. These programs include a short-term education at PLARF academic institutions, as well as partnerships with local civilian colleges, state-owned companies, and factories where personnel can take classes or learn new skills. As with the rest of the PLA, the PLARF views the creation of a professionalized NCO Corps as an essential component for building a modernized force. The Rocket Force NCO School is the primary institution that is tasked with training this force and annually trains approximately 20,000 NCOs. This includes training both for new and existing personnel to become NCOs, as well as newer training program to turn recent college graduates into NCOs as part of the PLARF's drive toward a more educated force. PLARF fields a diverse and growing array of ballistic and cruise missiles, supporting a range of strategic and operational objectives. The PLARF's missile inventory can be broken up into 5 broad categories: short range, medium range, intermediate range, and intercontinental ballistic missiles, as well as ground-launched cruise missiles. The short-range ballistic missiles, or SRBMs, generally have a range of under 1,000 kilometers. The PLARF currently has 3 SRBMs in its inventory: the older DF-11 and the DF-15, which entered service in the early 1990s and have since been periodically upgraded with new variants, and the newer, more capable DF-16, which may have entered service around 2011. All of these missiles are road mobile and deployed with conventional warheads. According to the Department of Defense's latest open source estimate, the PLARF has approximately 200 SRBM launchers and over 600 missiles. Currently, there are estimated to be 2 DF-16 and 2 DF-15 brigades and 1 remaining DF-11 brigade. Medium-range ballistic missiles, or MRBMs, generally have a range of 1,000 to 3,000 kilometers. The PLARF is currently equipped with 2 road-mobile MRBMs, the DF-21 and the DF-17. The DF-21 is utilized in both the regional nuclear strike role as the DF-21A, the conventional strike role as the DF-21C, and in the anti-ship role as the DF-21D. A new nuclear variant, the DF-21E, also allegedly exists, although information on this is scant. The DF-21 itself dates back to the 80s and is slowly being replaced by a newer missile type such as the DF-26. The PLARF may have 1 or 2 nuclear DF-21A brigades still in service, and as of 2019, all of the DF-21C brigades have likely converted to new missiles. And there's recent evidence that the PLARF's 2 DF-21D brigades may have also converted to the newer missile as well. The newer DF-17 is the PLARF's first hypersonic missile with the attached DF-ZF hypersonic glide vehicle. It's believed to have been deployed to at least 3 launch brigades thus far. Intermediate range ballistic missiles, or IRBMs, generally have a range of 3,000 to 5,000 kilometers, and the PLARF is currently equipped with a single road-mobile IRBM, the DF-26, which may have entered service around 2015. According to DoD estimates, the PLARF has at least 200 IRBM launchers and at least 200 missiles in service. It has also been deployed to at least 5 missile brigades. The DF-26 is capable of firing nuclear, conventional, or anti-ship warheads, and notably, unlike the DF-21, the DF-26's nuclear and conventional roles do not appear to be clearly geographically separated. And in at least some cases, single brigades have been noted to be intermingling nuclear and conventional missiles. This has led to concerns over whether the United States or another country would be able to differentiate if an incoming strike was nuclear or conventional, possibly leading to an inadvertent nuclear escalation in a crisis. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, generally have a minimum range of 5,500 kilometers. The PLARF is currently equipped with 1 silo-based ICBM, the DF-5, and 2 road-mobile ICBMs, the DF-31 and DF-41, all of which are capable of striking most of the continental United States. An older ICBM, the DF-4, may already have been retired, and the silo-based DF-5, which first entered service in the 1980s, has been upgraded with A, B, and C variants. The B variant is capable of carrying up to 5 warheads. The DF-31 and the newest DF-41 are notable for being road mobile and solid fueled. The DF-41 is also MIRV capable, possibly carrying 3 to 5 warheads, although this is still a matter of debate. Notably, the PLARF has begun a dramatic expansion of its ICBM silos, with construction on as many as 260 new silos across 3 new locations. We'll talk more about the facilities later, but as of 2021, the DF-5 may have been deployed to 3 brigades, the DF-31 to 9 brigades, and the newest DF-41 to 1 brigade, although it will surely be deployed to more in time. Finally, the PLARF is equipped with 2 types of conventional ground-launched cruise missiles, or GLICMs. The CJ-10 entered service around 2006 and has a range of about 1,500 kilometers. It's likely deployed to 2 brigades, while the newer CJ-100, with superior range and accuracy, may have been deployed to its first brigade around 2020. In addition to its new missile system, the PLARF has worked to improve the infrastructure needed to support these missiles, including over-the-horizon radars, satellites, and other sensors to enable long-range precision strike. Development of these systems will be especially critical to realizing the full potential of the PLARF's anti-ship missile systems, which will be unable to successfully locate and strike far-off ships without these sensor networks. The PLARF also employs 2 UAV regiments for strike support and battlefield ISR. During peacetime, units are stationed at a garrison, which would likely be the target of an enemy attack in the event of a crisis. On strategic warning, the units will rapidly deploy to hardened shelters, a holding area, or proceed directly to their launch site. Mobilized weapon systems generally launch from pre-established concealed launch sites with concrete launch pads to enable the latest instructions and targeting data via fiber optic links. Pre-established sites also reduce the risk of fires and injuries. Ad hoc sites may also be used in the event of a conflict, and the PLARF has made significant improvements to its C4ISR infrastructure in recent years, laying thousands of miles of fiber optic cables to maintain those communications. The PLARF also makes extensive use of underground facilities, or UGFs, which have been dug out by the engineering units of Base 68. It's unknown how many miles of underground tunnels there are, and stories of a contiguous 3,000-mile underground Great Wall are almost surely overblown. But the number is likely significant. Underground facilities and their connecting tunnels are built to be wide enough to accommodate large vehicles such as multiple TELs and feature multiple exits to avoid being trapped by a missile strike on any one facility entrance. Hard rock and steel plating make these sites extremely difficult to destroy with anything short of a direct nuclear strike. Most of the PLARF's nuclear warheads are stored at a central hardened facility known as Base 67, deep in the Qingling Mountains near a city of Baishan. A smaller number of warheads are forward deployed and under the administrative control of the individual bases. These forward deployed warheads are controlled by each base's equipment inspection regiment and are kept in a centralized location where they can be rapidly deployed to the base's nuclear brigades if needed. Warheads are not regularly mated with missiles in peacetime or even stored on site, precluding the possibility of a launch on warning posture. Rather, in the event of a sudden nuclear war, these brigades would attempt to ride out the first strike at hardened underground facilities, receiving their warheads if they had not already, and then launching a counterstrike. The PLARF has also traditionally made use of smaller number of missile silos, perhaps 20 or so, for its ICBMs. However, in the summer of 2021, open source analysts revealed a dramatic expansion of the PLARF's silos. As many as 3 silo fields were discovered in Xinjiang, Gansu, and Inner Mongolia, revealing ongoing construction of as many as 260 new silos. It's unclear whether these silos will all house missiles or if they'll be used as a kind of a nuclear shell game in which only some of the silos will be filled. But a lack of clarity around which silos are filled will force an adversary to target all of them, expending significant resources in the process. It's also unclear if this development presages a more aggressive nuclear posture, such as a movement to a launch on warning posture, or even abandonment of China's official no first use nuclear weapons policy. In conclusion, under Xi Jinping's rule, China's missile forces have been elevated to a full service on equal footing with the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The PLARF has backed up its newly elevated status with an unprecedented expansion, adding at least 10 new brigades, a bevy of new weapon platforms, and most recently the construction of hundreds of new hardened silos. In a recent interview, Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Hyten, spoke about the PLA rocket force with concern, stating that China is undergoing an unprecedented nuclear modernization. This raises concerns and questions about whether a newly assertive PLARF will move toward a more aggressive launch on warning policy, as well as the sustainability of China's current no first use nuclear weapons policy. Whatever the case, it is obvious that the PLA rocket force will play an important and growing role in the PLA's strategy in the coming years. As General Hyten and other senior military leaders have stated, the United States' military must be able to move fast with a clear strategy and willingness to adapt as China continues to advance its capabilities. We'd also like to encourage you to take a look at the other videos in the series that address the other parts of the PLA. Just as we are approaching warfighting with an eye toward joint operations, so is the PLA. We hope this introduction to the PLA rocket force has helped you understand the threat and is encouraging you to think about ways of overcoming that threat. Thank you for watching.